Welcome. My name is Bharwaney. I'm the founder and CEO of EI World. We're a boutique firm focused on applying emotional intelligence to leaders and teams all over the world. It's great to be part of this virtual event. This is an absolutely amazing opportunity to learn from each other, to focus on the technologies that are really taking us forward, and at the same time to really think about everything that the transformations that we're working on actually require of the human being. So this keynote presentation is titled Digital Transformation Requires Human Transformation. And it's my belief that for our digital journeys to be really successful and fulfilling, we need to actually look at the human being as part of that. So let me start by saying that I want to give you a personal summary of why this has become so important to me. Back in 2005, I found myself in a consultant's office in a local hospital, being given the news that I had 2 late-stage tumors that meant that I had strong likelihood of dying very young. I was 38 at the time, and it was very clear to me from that particular meeting that the consultant was telling me that I should go home, I should close my business, and I should prepare myself to die. And frankly, at the time, after getting over the initial shock, it was very clear to me that the old ways that I had been living and working just hadn't really worked, that it was time to actually rethink everything. And if I had any chance of success in surviving, then I needed to put in practice, the experiments, the thinking that could actually help me be well. What I actually did was I rethought how I was spending my energy, what work I was doing, what lit me up in my work, what didn't light me up, and also what was the quality of my core health, my physical health. After doing that rigorous review, I shifted my work virtually in 2005. Now, back in the day, there were very few technologies that were actually being used to support virtual working, but that was a shift I made, and it was a really important shift at the time. I also gave up work and relationships that no longer were serving me, and that's a very courageous thing to do when, you might be driven by work, the sort of benefit of doing work. And I also started to understand that values were absolutely at the core of my life and work. And wherever I was showing up untrue to my values, it was having a massive impact. And linked with that, I realized that I couldn't take any more risks. I was able to distinguish what were the healthy behaviors that I wanted to demonstrate in my life, but also what were the unhealthy behaviors that I had to remove. And this type of rethink is exactly what I believe that we need to do now in order for our technology journeys to be effective. That rethinking involves investing in the human being. The journey I've just described is what led me to focus on emotional intelligence and emotional resilience as the core of the human being. And linked with that, I've now spent 31 years in total researching these areas, coaching in these areas, writing about these areas, and continuing to actually look at the practice of how leaders and teams actually operate. So through this conference, we're bringing our core work of emotional intelligence and emotional resilience so that other people in this community can benefit from it. So the situation today, as I see it, is that we're on the brink of major developments, Industry 4.0, robotics, AI, to name a few. And there's a constant race to bring products to market faster than our competitors. And also the need to bring ideas in front of investors who actually have the potential to help inventions to scale effectively. Whilst this is all exciting, it's also a bit terrifying in my view. The conversations at conferences like this are often filled with optimism and excitement about the bright future that lies ahead. But actually, we also need to recognize that there are other voices that we need to bring to the fore. And this is the other reason why I'm grateful to have the opportunity to bring these ideas into the heart of the conference. And I'm here to tell you that if we don't get this people piece right, we're going to be left in the dust. Because in this gold rush that's going on, there is both an internal chaos going on as well as a team chaos, which affects people at the organizational level. Last year, for example, we interviewed CEOs that we work directly with, and we asked them, what is the single thing that takes up most of your time, that takes up your bandwidth when you're trying to move your businesses forward? And what they told us is that it's the people problems that are the most time consuming, the petty politics, the tensions between people, the big egos, the personalities, the big personalities, unresolvable problems between different departments, the silos, etc. And when we ask them, what do they spend most time doing in solving those problems? They literally said the only thing that they can do is to sit down and actually try to work things out between the different departments, between the individuals or with the individuals that are, for whatever reason, not performing at their best. These issues are therefore very costly. They're costly in terms of not having clear ways to tackle them in a sustainable way, but they also take up an inordinate amount of time. And we also hear in confidential discussions with teams, when we ask teams what is really going on, what we hear from teams is that because of digital addiction, it's very hard to get people's attention. So in other words, there's so much, everybody is expected to be on 24/7, and then trying to have a focused discussion becomes actually quite difficult. So the question then becomes, how do we make sound decisions? If people are not showing up at their best, how does a business actually make sound decisions? And we know from the study of emotional intelligence that all decisions involve the emotions, unless it's a maths problem, of course, but all decisions involve emotions. And therefore, we need to be able to understand our emotional state and how that affects the decisions that we make. The other dynamic today is that we have legacy entrepreneurs that are really needing to acquire a number of different businesses in order to prepare for Industry 4.0. And at the same time, there are so many startups now trying to get, a return on investment for their hard-earned, work that they've put in for the companies that they've helped build. So with that background, the key question becomes, who do you want to be? And what sort of legacy are you actually building through your life, work, and business? There's also the economy of our attention spans. We do, after all, only have 24 hours in a day, including sleep. So the question becomes, how and where do we focus our energy? All of these questions are in the backdrop of the fact that our traditional structures have now completely broken down. The hierarchies, the rituals of hierarchy, all of the ceremonies that we used to expect in an organization, all of those since COVID-19 have now broken down and are being rethought. So with that in mind, the key important thing now is everything has been thrown up for discussion and change. And it's my belief that with this backdrop, it is absolutely essential that we now take the right steps. The key here is to make sure that we're transforming people alongside the technology. We've developed a framework to help you to do this. We call it the art and practice of behavior change. The art is awareness, resilience, and team effectiveness. Let me run through those quite quickly. So awareness is about asking those tough questions that enable us to develop a very, very clear, realistic perspective of what's really going on. I touched on some of these earlier in my own personal story, but in addition to those, in addition to questions about our core health and relationships and our self-care and how we're setting ourselves up for success every day, our core values, etc. We're also asking questions about the team. How are things going in the team? How are we actually addressing the needs of the team? And how are we actually working with stakeholders? How well is that going right now? We also ask ourselves questions about what are the dinosaur roars? What are the things going on that we're not paying attention to? For example, are we aging beyond our years? Are we not paying attention to a specific aspect of how we're functioning that is so obvious to everybody else? So we're asking those rigorous self-reflection questions, and from that awareness, we're attempting to summarize our strengths, our weaknesses, and also the specific things that we want to change. That's the awareness part of art. Now let's move on to resilience. Now, resilience is not just resilience, it's about emotional resilience. It's the choosing the thoughts, feelings, and actions that enable us to perform at our best. This framework for understanding emotional resilience was published in my 2015 book, and I offer you the model, my framework of emotional resilience, as a model for our human development from now onwards. In other words, let's distinguish the things, the aspects of ourselves, of our functioning that are set from a young age. Things like self-control and self-worth. Some of these aspects are set from a very young age. Our ability to empathize. There may be a natural level that we bring from our early life, but no matter what we bring, we can learn emotion-based skills in order to be effective in our everyday jobs. And in addition to that, there are results areas. There are the things that are very visible to other people that we interact with. Team effectiveness is all about the behaviors that enable a team to be high functioning. And today, the key question is what's going to enable a team to add the most value to itself and to its stakeholders? And that requires taking a really, really specific look at the way that the team is operating. What we know from research is that teams are literally hotbeds of emotion. All decisions involve emotion. And only maths decisions, only maths problems don't involve emotions, but actually everything that happens in a team will bring up emotions. And the key is being able to enable a team to have the conversations that are important to the work of the team. And most problems, earlier I mentioned about the pain points of CEOs when we've talked to our CEO clients. And what we've realized is that a number of those pain points can actually be solved in teams. If teams are functioning well, those problems should get solved in a team. But that involves really developing the norms, the behaviors that can support a team to be effective. People have three core human social needs when they work in a team, and those are belonging, shared understanding, and control. So in teams, what we can do is we can actually cultivate the specific behaviors that enable a team to be successful, not only as individuals working together, but also the team as a unit within an organization, and also the team with its stakeholders. And we actually need to give attention to all three of those levels so that the team can actually be high functioning. And it also matters in teams. If one person's not functioning at their best, that's actually a team sport. In other words, it's not about removing a team member because they are underperforming. It's about asking ourselves the question, what's the collective responsibility in this team for actually making sure that everybody is performing at their best? I've now talked about art, and I'm going to turn it over to one of our technology clients to share his experience of how art actually worked in practice. So over to you, Laurent.
We're going through a breakdown due to a downturn in the oil and gas industry. I would think that we had a center that was structurally built for a higher output. And so as the market went through a downturn, in some way we had a fairly heavy structure, both in the building cost and in the overhead teams. And so being able to create new business venture to fill up the capacity of this center was key. And through an art exercise, awareness, resilience, and teamwork, we were able to shift the spirit of the team to work towards a new business venue and develop in a very short time a new tool, which typically took us 7 years to do the previous generation of tools. And by aligning all the people to work toward one specific focus, we're able to get the same result in 4 months. People that are meeting in executive management meeting day after days and seeing the gears being stuck, and then suddenly seeing like synergy and energy and positive attitude flowing back among the same individual was quite important. So what we've learned during that experience is like breakthrough comes from breakdown, and it's okay to accept there is a breakdown. You need to face it as a team, and then from there you can only move on. But if you stay in the breakdown and if you believe that's the day-to-day aspect, you'll never go further than that.
So we're now going to focus on the actual practice of behaviour change. And the important thing with this is that we've already looked at the role of chaos going on right now, and also the need to learn some specific different ways of being. And to me, that represents the biggest need that we have, our human needs today. But what I'm talking about here, given that we already have so many talented 21st century leaders in this community and others, the important thing is that we're talking about small incremental changes. We're not talking about huge, great big changes. We're talking about things that we can learn to do repetitively and consistently in order to work easier, faster, better. And that's really what leads me to describing to you that we've come up with the acronym and also the app called STARS as a very practical way to guide you through 5 important elements of the practice of behaviour change. So let me walk through this with you quickly now. So the S is surveys. This is where we ask those deep questions about what's the current situation today? What are my strengths? What am I doing well? What am I not doing so well? Where are the pain points? And what do I observe in other people that they do well? And from that, we actually can identify the areas that we most want to change. And then in this conference, for example, we've deployed 10 key questions that we want each of you to answer. And from that, we'll both gather a perspective on what's top of people's minds, where the biggest pain points are. And then the T is tactics. Tactics is about the specific new actions or new behaviors that we can learn to actually be effective in daily life. And there are always tactics involved. For this specific conference, we have identified a couple of tactics: focus, openness, energy, and also some self-soothing tactics. And that is a way to really think about what you might want to do differently. And then from there, we move to aspirations. Now, aspirations are about grounding your everyday life in a much bigger vision. And we think about 6 areas of life: career, intellectual, physical, financial, spiritual, and social. And to actually walk through each of those and think about what it is that is your living legacy in each of those areas. What would be a life fully well spent? And how are you going to divide up your time between work and other activities in order to truly be fulfilled and to bring that deep kind of energy reservoir from within? And then the R is regeneration. This is about the areas that require specific focus. In the app, we deploy specific priority topics. So for this conference, what we've done is we've decided to deploy something specific to help you reflect more deeply on one area that you might want to work on, which is the team check-in and how you actually stay connected with your people in your team and make sure you know what they're thinking and feeling. And then the final S is space. Now, space is where we look a bit deeper at our original operating system that we will have inherited from our family of origin and actually think about some deeper topics. For example, for this conference, we've picked out 2 aspects of emotion analysis to encourage you to think about and think through what exactly is it that leads to these specific emotions in you in everyday life, and we encourage you to challenge your assumptions about them. So STARS, in summary, is a comprehensive way to actually work on a development pathway to help a shift to happen. And it's my belief that if we can do this consistently and at scale, we'll actually be supporting the world to learn new behaviors, for the business world to actually be sustainable in its efforts. And that's super exciting to me. I want to end by saying a few final things. So I'm a very proud 53-year-old today. I did survive that cancer blip, obviously, and I'm now a proud mum of a 3-year-old son. I have a loving marriage with my husband, Mark, and we also are planning for a second child, hopefully quite soon. And with all of that, what I've learned the hard way is that we can't reserve being kind, just for special occasions. If we actually want our organizations to be sustainable, we actually need to find that deep reservoir from within that can bring empathy forward in the world today. And it's my real belief that if we can do this in, a large scale way, alongside all the technologies that we develop, we're going to be in really good shape. So finally, I'd like to say thank you for listening. I want to invite you to do 3 things. Firstly, to download our app, to work through the reflection questions that are in there and the reflection videos, etc. To stay in contact with me. If you've got any ideas, please feel free to reach out. You might have ideas that would bring strategic input into how we would scale this app going forwards. I'm all open to your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and advice. And there's also the potential for collaborations for us to work together to take this app forward. So I wish you all the best. Have a great conference. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.